Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Good morning, Mike.
Hey guys, how are you?
Josh Henning is filling in for a couple minutes here for Nick Costco, and he said he doesn't think you had enough Diet Cokes yet.
Maybe not. He kind of threw me. I was waiting to hear Nick, and all of a sudden I got hit with Josh. So it was kind of jarring. Caught me off guard, basically.
There you go.
You know.
I don't know if you were listening in the last half hour or so. We had Scott Goodale, wrestling coach up at Rutgers, on talking about all this social media stuff. Really great interview. It was great to hear a college coach's perspective on the dangers of social media and how it can affect potential recruits. Give me your. I was really on board with your column this week in terms of the St. Joe stuff and how it's 2018 now. You really have to be sensitive to what you say, what's on video. It's not 1988 anymore. It's not even 2008. So talk a little bit more about this whole situation this week and what your thoughts as a veteran reporter were.
Yeah, well, kind of, when I wrote the column, a couple things. The social media thing. A lot of people think that if you send a Instagram post or a Snapchat or a tweet or whatever else you can do from one person to another, people think it's just between those two friends. Well, it's not. It's once it goes out there, it's for the world to see, and it's not like you said, 1988, where maybe two friends can kid each other and it just stays between them. These days, nothing stays between anybody. So once you hit that send button, it's out there for the entire world to see. And the excuse that, well, he's my friend or we're just kidding around doesn't wash anymore if you say something offensive in that conversation that sort of offends other people or reflects poorly on your program or team. And the other point I just tried to make in the article was that high school athletes have a lot of perks. I mean, they get to come on shows like this. They get their names on websites and papers. They win state championships and fire trucks greet them and parade them around town. And, with those perks comes more responsibility. I mean, all eyes are on you at the school and in your community. And if you, screw up, now we're not saying, lock the door and throw away the key and stuff like that. But if you do screw up, it's going to be noticed, and you're going to be held, like it or not, to a higher standard than just the average kid who's in geometry class. And if you can't deal with that, then just don't play. I mean, because that's just the facts of life in 2018.
I think, Mike, that you made a great point. I think that's one of the biggest things that high school kids really don't understand is the responsibility they have as star athletes on a very good team. And it can be any team, really. It doesn't even have to be a great team, but as a varsity athlete, you're not a typical student, and I think sometimes high school kids don't really understand the full range of that.
Yeah, and that's okay because I mean, at the end of the day, there's still high school kids, and everything in sports and in school, what they do should be geared towards a learning experience, and that's and that's a lesson to learn. And kind of the point of my column was, St. Joe learned this lesson the hard way this week. Maybe the other schools in the area can kind of, learn it the easy way by seeing what happened to St. Joe and seeing what happened to other schools and athletes in the past with some social media stuff and kind of getting the message, ahead of time. But unfortunately for St. Joe, they learned the hard way this week. And I think the other thing is, what has to be kept in mind there is the issue has to be looked at in perspective. I mean, the St. Joe kids, some of them made a mistake. Okay, they're still teenagers, still high school students. They get the opportunity to learn and grow from that. And Coach Paul Sacco, the winningest coach in South Jersey history, 37 seasons at St. Joe, he and his wife Peggy have devoted their lives to that program and that school. You can make a very real case that maybe that school doesn't even stay open if it's not for the success of the football team. One Instagram or Snapchat video does not take away those 37 years. So, it's a learning experience for me. It's a learning experience for Coach, but I think you got to look at things in perspective too and look at the whole picture.
Talking with Mike McGarry of the Press of Atlantic City. And, Mike, were you okay with the 2-game suspension for Coach? I mean, you kind of have to send some sort of message, right?
Yeah, I agree. Like, I wrote my column that's on pressofac.com and was in the Press of Atlantic City yesterday. I thought the school handled it well. I mean, the video came out on Wednesday. The school did what they had to do and handed down the suspensions and took action swift and right away. And I thought it was a proper response for everybody involved. So I think you have to commend the school for what they did and how they handled it. But like you said, I mean, it's just behavior that's just not acceptable anymore in 2018. I mean, the NJSA has made a point of, emphasizing before games, the officials read a little card or a speech saying, hey, if you use any racial slurs, if you taunt opponents, you're going to be tossed immediately without any question. And in 2018, it's behavior that can't be tolerated, on any level. It's just the way it is. And some people try to argue, well, the kids didn't mean this, or it wasn't this, or it wasn't that. I mean, those excuses just don't fly today. If it's out there and people see it, it's trouble.
Well, what struck me, and I guess it's to be expected from sort of the collective fan base of St. Joe, and they've started this kind of petition letter in support of Coach Sacco, which is understandable. But I think they're trying a little bit here to play maybe the victim card to a certain extent. And like you said, really just you have to kind of just own this at this point.
Yeah, I would. I think the thing is, as a person who has gotten some emails or text about this from people, I mean, look, nobody enjoys. I guarantee you, nobody enjoys. I don't enjoy writing stories like this. I don't enjoy. Seeing Coach Paul Sacco suspended for 2 games. I'm not, hitting the keys on the computer with glee as I write this story. I mean, nobody kind of wants to write this story or do it, but you've got a job to do. And I think the thing I would say is nobody is personally attacking Coach. Coach has run a great program for 37 years. He's one of the great programs in South Jersey. I've written stories that tell, showing what he's done for kids. My favorite Paul Sacco stories are, a St. Joe football player is a freshman at college. The kid in his first month of school is homesick. He's having a hard time, and he looks up, and there is, on a weeknight, his coach and his wife, greeting him outside of his dorm or after practice and taking him to dinner, to help him out. He's done that for countless people, countless times, and other nice things like that. So, again, that's what I meant by perspective, keeping it in perspective. So, nobody – this is one incident, okay? And I agree with what the school did. But, again, I don't think you wipe away all – the 37 other years and the stuff he's done because of it. I think what you do is everybody, let's try to learn from it and not be in this situation again. I've talked to several other people from prominent programs who, almost have a therefore by the grace of God, go us, because, everybody is one hit of the send button away from big trouble if you don't think. And that was the point of my article. I mean, I don't think the St. Joe kids, they didn't envision this happening. I don't think they were malicious or something. They just didn't think. And in 2018, you have to think, because in today's world and everything, everything's magnified today because of social media, because people can see what's going on all the time.
Talking with Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. And, Mike, one of the things that really struck me about Coach Goodale from Rutgers Wrestling, what he said was, he's got 4 guys on staff, and they'll monitor recruits' of social media to look for patterns of behavior in terms of anything malicious or angry or anti-this, anti-that. So it's a really kind of a wake-up call for high school kids, which you don't think you would need at this point, but obviously we still do, about how to conduct yourself. And it might not just be one thing. It might be a collection of things that goes out there on Instagram or Twitter or Snapchat that these coaches, you could be on high on their recruiting list one day and off at the next.
Yeah, I mean, and Coach used a great word there, pattern. I mean, so, they're looking for things that constantly come up and stuff like that, which is the way it should be. One stupid tweet or one Snapchat post should not ruin your life. But if there's a pattern to it, there's a bit of a problem. Now, obviously, if one of those tweets or one of those Snapchats crosses the line, as it did with, St. Joe, okay, you get punished, and then you kind of regroup and go forward and try to learn from it and stuff like that. But again, as I wrote in the column too, if you're a good high school athlete or you're part of an elite program, I mean, all eyes are on you. I'm not naive. I'm not going to say that was the video that St. Joe sent to Haddonfield was there were 40 West Jersey Football League games played that weekend. I'm not going to be naive and say that was the only
right.
quote unquote trash talking Snapchat video sent between players of opposing teams. But this was St. Joe and Haddonfield, and it came out, and that's you're going to play for St. Joe football. You're going to accept the sort of perks and the glory that comes with winning 19 state titles. Well, then you got to accept the fact that you are under the microscope, and that's just the way it is.
Talking with Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. And Mike, getting back to the on-field stuff, last night I was really impressed with St. Augustine Prep, 27-14 win over Holy Spirit. That was a really good Holy Spirit team, and they handled them. I mean, this defense has just made a complete 180 since that St. Joe loss.
Yeah, St. Augustine has kind of hit its stride. Like you said, at one point I had real doubts about them, and it was after the St. Joe loss. I mean, they were 1-2. And I'm like, yeah, they're playing a tough schedule, but, is it enough to play a tough schedule? Sometimes you got to not only play a tough schedule, you got to win some of these games. So, they've been able to turn it around 4 straight in a row, and a couple of factors. I mean, Nasir Hill has kind of emerged as a dependable running back, former freshman from Mays Landing. And then, like you said, defensively, I'm amazed every time. Joe Bonsack at linebacker just seems to be all over the field. Shane Quast at linebacker hardly ever comes up the field. And last night, the big guy, Isaiah Rakes, he's a force on the defensive line. And last night he runs for 2 touchdowns also. And one of my favorite lines all time in the, Press of Atlantic City, the story is online today and in the paper. He tells us that he weighs 295 pounds after a bowl of spaghetti. So I go, what about after a steak? And without hesitation, he goes 303. So one of the greatest lines ever. Just a great kid. And there's a good feeling right now around that St. Augustine football program. 5-2 and 4 straight wins over 4 straight quality opponents.
Mike, he refused to admit that he's the new feature back for St. Augustine.
Well, I don't think he wants to get cocky a little bit. And again, as I wrote in the story, though, it really shows the good chemistry that's there at St. Augustine, because he's a big guy. He comes in down around the goal line. So I said to him, you don't have to do any of the hard work. The other running backs and quarterback Chris Allen move the ball down the field, and then he comes in and plows across the goal line. But there's no jealousy. Nobody's mad or angry or stuff like that. And he said, sometimes I feel like the other running back should run it in. He goes, but I'll take it. I'll do it. So, but that shows the good feeling, the good chemistry among the team that, hey, nobody's on the sidelines grumbling. Hey, why? I just ran, us all the way down here. Why aren't I getting the end zone? In fact, it seems to me the opposite, that the teammates sort of love to see him get in the end zone and sort of relish him barreling across the goal line. So, like I said, there's, Pete Lancetta in his second year out there, long-time great Hamilton coach. He's kind of, shaped, he has his way of doing things, and it's obviously been successful. And St. Augustine is kind of doing things the Lancetta way right now, and that there's good chemistry on that football team, and you see it, you see it manifest itself in how, they root for Rakes and things like that.
Mike, real quick before we let you go, one of the other big stories, Mainland 5-2 now have a shot at that Independence Division title. What do you make of this team that won 2 games combined the last 2 years?
Well, obviously they had been prepping for this year, right? They had played a lot of young players. A lot of players as sophomores and freshmen got on the field and they kind of took their lumps, and now they're kind of reaping the benefits of those. And that's a big win last night over Middle Township. I know Miss Sarah had a big game for them at 5-2. I think coming into the week, I think Mainland was 15th of 16 teams in the Group 4 UPI, UPR ranking, whatever it is. So you have to be in the top 16 to make the playoffs. So Mainland with a big win last night to sort of get to 5-2. And, now I guess they set up a game with Ocean City down the road to sort of decide that Independence division there in the West Jersey Football League. So just a great job by Mainland. And it's kind of like, high school football in Atlantic County and the traditional Cape Atlantic League is just more fun when Mainland is winning. So it's good to see the Mustangs, back and having a good season.
Great stuff as always, Mike. We appreciate it. How's the seventh grade basketball team looking?
We started some preseason practices. We're looking sharp, but we still need to come together. We're just going to take it one game at a time and do our jobs and execute on each possession, and a million other cliches that I've heard for 25 years right back at you,
You're always a pro, Mike. We appreciate it, buddy.
All right. Thanks a lot, Sully.
Have a great weekend, man.
See you later.
That was Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Always enjoy his take on high school sports.